Hi, girls. Welcome back, and we're going to talk today about the seven dimensions of religion. The seven dimensions of religion are not like the Ten Commandments or something, it's just this author's organization of seven different elements that are found in all religions universally. And so to examine them is important. So the first one's experience, and by that we don't so much mean my religious experience, like on a retreat or during my own prayer or a Bible study or something like that. We really mean the experience that happens at the beginning of a religion that launches it, the events that are at the origin of a religion. It could be belief, like faith, or a mystical experience that someone has. For instance, Muslims believe that the Prophet Muhammad uh, went into a cave and there experienced in some mysterious way God's presence, and this began the revelation of the Quran to him. That experience becomes like key to launch that religion. The death and resurrection of Jesus becomes a key event or experience that the apostles and the early disciples say they experienced. That becomes everything in that religion. Had it not happened, you don't have that religion. The Buddha sitting under the tree and becoming enlightened. So all these experiences are some experience of the divine, or whatever you want to call it, that is so huge that it actually launches a movement of people who believe in that and follow that. Okay, so the second dimension is called myth. And by myth, we don't mean things that didn't happen or fairy tales. We mean sacred stories that are about the origins of that experience. So, for instance, you have Jesus rising from the dead, and what do you have? You begin to have the story being told in the early scriptures, in the Gospels, and so forth. And those would be the mythic element of religion. Here you see a picture of Star Wars because there are truths in these kinds of stories, whether you like Star Wars or not, that tell universal truths that are being told in a way that's not quite true, right? So there's no real Darth Vader, there's no real Luke Skywalker, but what the truths are that are being expressed in these myths are true. Uh, that's not quite what we mean by like Jesus' resurrection. Yeah, this isn't going well. I'm just going to end this right here. No, we'll just keep going. So the second dimension is myth. And by this, we don't mean something like a fairy tale or something that didn't happen. We say, oh, that's just a myth. No, myth in religion means sacred story that expresses a real truth. Whether the package of that story is true entirely or not. Take something like uh, the resurrection of Jesus. What do we mean by that? Well, all we have is the story. We have no idea what the real experience uh, must have been like, or what actually happened at the moment of the resurrection. Other myths are sometimes obviously not real or not true to life in the presentation of the story, but what the truth is behind the myth is what we're after, right? That's the truth. So sacred truths that express this experience that has happened. Doctrine is the more rational or philosophical part of religion. So you have an experience, something like the death of Jesus, right? And then you have the story of what that means in the scriptures. But then later on, you get certain teachings in Christianity that a pope might write or that we might find in some other kind of source. Whoops. And for example, the whole idea of that all life is sacred in Christianity. Where do we get that? Well, we get that from the fact that God Himself became flesh and gave His life on the cross for us. So we must be worth something, right? This is where this is coming from. So the doctrine are more specific beliefs that kind of um, play out that mythic element a bit. Now, ethics are part of doctrine or teachings of a religion, but this author lumps them together in a separate category, so we're going to do the same here just to be clear. So, what should we do? How should we act in the world? This whole idea of morality, moral teaching in a religion is very important, and you see it in all religions. Ritual. Here you see examples of the myth being played out. For instance, we have the story of Jesus the night before he died, taking bread and wine and giving it to his disciples and saying, "This is my body and blood. This is what you're to do from here on in." And so we have this ritual of doing that again and again. The ritual of Muslims walking around what's called the Kaaba in Mecca during their pilgrimage, the Hajj pilgrimage. Something that the Prophet Muhammad did, something that they believe even Abraham did. So very sacred to them. Even the Buddhist ritual of sitting in meditation. Why do they do that? That's what the Buddha did. And so these rituals are ways of plugging back into, connecting to these sacred stories or myths or truths of the religion. Community, very simple thing. All groups do this, right? Religious or not. They get together in community. They have a social identity, a sense of belonging with each other. And this could be a church choir. It could be, religion class, or these people are in a lecture here. It could be any kind of gathering whatsoever, or any kind of sense of belonging to your church or what have you. Even Seton, the idea of being one community and all the elements that go along with that. And then last of all, the idea of the material element or dimension of religion. In all religions, there are sacred things, there are sacred places, objects, and you see some examples here with stained glass, or the river Ganges for Hindus, the Quran and the Quran stand that is usually set on in Islam. So we're going to explore this element a little bit more in an exercise for homework, and I'll tell you a little bit about that, or will have already told you about it by the time you see this video. Okay,